At some point, you're probably going to find yourself in a position where you need to animate a page turning. And there's a couple ways of going about doing this. Actually, there's several ways about going about doing this. But I'm going to show you a couple, and then you can decide what works best for you. To start, let's go ahead and build a page. I'm just going to build it out of a flat plane. So we'll create a one-page document, except I'm going to go ahead and give it some segments. And I'm just using the up arrow key and now the right arrow key just to give us some segments to work with. And here's our object. Now, I can also, depending on how close I get to it, how much detail I want, I can also turn this into subpatches, which I'm going to go ahead and do and hit the tab key. And so this will be our page. Now, we don't have to work with subpatches. We can work with a polygonal mesh and it would all work the same. But for this, I'm going to go ahead and turn on subpatches. So now that we have our object, I'm going to go ahead and save it, and let's send it over to layout. So I'm going to use this menu up here in the right top corner and choose send object to layout. And here we are in layout. Let's go ahead and switch to 4 windows by clicking our little min-max window icon right here. And this will allow us to see our scene from several different angles. Now, like I said, there's a few different ways that we can go about doing this. I'm going to start by using a tool called Spline Control. It's pretty easy to set up, and it can be a lot of fun to work with. So I'm going to move over to Modify, where I can see the Spline Control tool, but in order to use it, to activate it, I need to apply it to an object. So I have this object selected, and I'm going to choose Objects, Properties. I'm going to move over to the Deform tab, and under Add Displacement, I'm going to choose Spline Control. It adds it to our list here, and if I double click, we get a window right here to work with. I'm going to leave that window open, but I'll close the Object Properties tab, and I'm going to activate Spline Control. And what it does is it goes ahead and puts a spline with different handles, with different control points. It automatically places it along the length of the object. I'm going to change it to the x-axis from the z, and you can see we've got several handles to work with here. Now for this, let's just start with a basic page turn. So know that we can add as many control points as we want, but let's just go ahead and work with 3. So I'll use 3, and I'll just kick this off to the side, and let's take a look at animating our page. Well, first, let's see how this works. I'm going to move over to, let's just say, frame 3. I'm not going to be too picky about the timing on this. I just want to show you more of the functionality of using Spline Control. So I'm going to raise the middle control point up, maybe move out the page a little bit, move over to frame 6, and let's start turning the page, and I'll come up like so. Now we're losing the sight of our page because our page is a single-sided polygon, which we'll be touching base on the surfacing later on. But let's jump over to the surface editor and turn on smoothing and double-sided. So now we can see the page. It'll just make it easier so that we can see what's going on. Okay, and then I'll move over to frame 9, and let's have this guy come down. I'll go ahead and close this. We can skip this window. We can always open it back up again if we want. I just want the screen real estate. Okay, and let me just kind of flip through here. Okay, and maybe on frame 12, I'll have this rest down. Okay, so it's a basic page turn. It's not very detailed. We can always add more control points here that we can work with to make a page flip, but without doing much work at all, with just using the Spline Control tool, I've got a page turning here, and that could work. Again, depending on the look we're going for, this might be the solution for you. Spline Control is great. You can use it for rope, like if you have dangling rope and you want to animate that, tails, all kind of things like that, where you have it being controlled by the points on this spline. There are other ways of going about and making the page turn, and we'll take a look at that. Let's try doing it with bones. First, let's go ahead and take spline control off. I'm going to move over to the move tool, which drops the ability to animate. If you want to work with spline control, you need to have spline control selected. But I'm going to jump over to move, go to object, properties, and I'm just going to uncheck it. I don't have to remove it. I can just uncheck it and then it deactivates the tool. So I can close that, scrub through just to make sure. Yep, we're set. And now let's draw some bones in our object. To do this, I'm going to go ahead and just work in this window. Let me maximize the window. And we're going to draw some bones. So we'll move over to the Setup tab. And I'm going to use Draw Child Bones because I'm going to draw more than one. And we'll start, say, from the center and just kind of create a few bones to work with, like so. And we'll drop the tool. I hit the space bar to drop the tool. Now the bones aren't active yet. When you create bones, they're there, but they won't actually deform the geometry until you turn bones on. So now the bones are on, and we can go ahead and start our animation. Okay, so let's start animating. I'm pretty lazy animator, so I'm gonna animate multiple bones at the same time. I'm gonna move over to, let's just go to frame 5, and I'm gonna select, I'm using the middle mouse button and I'm selecting multiple bones, and I'm just gonna rotate them up, and then I'm gonna go ahead and on frame, let's say on frame 10, we're going to start rotating the page. So I'm actually going to, on this keyframe, on keyframe 5, I'm going to take this bone and keyframe it. So it doesn't start automatically. From 0 to 5, it'll sit still. And then on frame 10, let's rotate the page up like that. And we've got auto key on, so it's automatically creating that keyframe. And then on frame 15, I'm going to move the page. Actually, let's just move it all the way down. We can always adjust these keyframes. So we'll move it all the way down like that. So our page goes something like this. The corner turns, it flips, but of course we've got to flip it back. So lazy animator me, I'm going to select these, and if we know that we need them back flat on, say, 15, I'm going to go ahead and keyframe 15 with where they were on frame 0, and now it goes like that. But when it's starting to flat back, they actually need to be rotating the other way. So on frame 15, I'm going to actually set that at frame 20. So I'll go 20, and on 15, I'm going to curl them back this way. They're going to have a delay. They're going to lag behind. Okay, so we turn the page, and they flap. So let's take a quick look at that. So the page curls up as if someone's grabbing that corner, turning the page, and then it flops down. Now, if we want to dress up, I mean, I really don't want to get too heavy into animation, but I will show you one thing that I like to do to kind of spice this up. If someone's grabbing the corner of this page, well, that's going to move before this, and then this, and then this. So we've already got the keyframes. What I'm going to do is select this first one, and then in the dope track that sits above the timeline, if that's not already open for you, all we have to do is put our cursor right here, click, and it opens it up. I'm going to grab this keyframe, and I'm just going to move it over, say, to frame 2 instead of 5. Then I'm going to move back one bone just by hitting the up arrow key, and I'm going to move this to frame 3, and then I'll move this to frame 4, and this I'll keep at 5. So now what happens is, little by little, I've offset the keyframes so that we can have the tip here animates before the rest, and it just kind of dresses it up. And I could offset the keyframes over there as well. So now I've got, this is a more detailed page turn, and again, if I want, I can add even more bones. If I want to smooth this out a little bit, one thing that I can do is move over to the Object Properties, and in the Geometry tab, I can set the subdivision order. Instead of first, I can set it to last, and it's going to smooth that out because it's going to it's going to handle the bone deformation. If we look in our subdivision order list, after the bones have manipulated the geometry, it will then subdivide the mesh, which is going to give us less points that it has to deal with when it's doing the turn. So if we set it to last, it's after all of this stuff, after morphing, bones, displacements, motion, we'll set it to last, and we get a much smoother result. Okay, so we'll just kind of scrub through that so we can take a look. Okay, so there's our page turn, and we could just duplicate this over and over again if we have multiple pages that we need to turn. Another way we can go about doing the exact same thing as far as turning a page, we could set up morph targets, and we could blend between multiple morph targets. But instead of showing you that, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. We've got two ways here that we can do without using morphs. I think we have a little more control with animation if we go and do it with either spline control or bones versus morphs. While we're here and we've got this set up, what I wanted to show is earlier we had, this is a single-sided poly, so we have one surface. If we turn double-sided on, whatever we put on this side is going to appear on the other side. Well, what if we didn't want that? What if we wanted two separate sides, but we still wanted to use a single-sided polygon? Well, there's a way to handle that. So what I'm going to do is in frame 0, just so that we can see, I'm going to kind of destroy my animation, but that's okay. I'm going to rotate this page so that we can see the back side and the front side at the same time. Okay, and so that we can do a render, I'm going to go to the camera view, Shift C to select the camera, T for move, move up, Y for rotate, and I'm going to move over and kind of get a good shot of our page. Okay, something like this. I'll do a render, and we can see gray and gray. This looks darker just because it's casting, because of the shadow, because of the way the light's hitting. Okay, so we have this, and what I want is two separate surfaces, but it's a single-sided polygon. So I'm going to open up the surface editor, go to the surface. Now, in order for this to work, I have to work with the node editor, which is good for me because I love working in the node editor. I'm going to turn it on by clicking the check here, and let's come over here. For starters, there's a bunch of different ways I can set it up. I'm going to go ahead and start with a mixer node. Excuse me. So I'm going to plug this in and double click, and for background color I'm going to choose red, and for foreground color I'm going to choose blue. Okay. If I were to just leave it at this and do a render, everything's blue. I need to tell it to use both colors, and that I do want this split into two different sides. To do this, I'm going to go to the add node, spot info, and I'm going to plug the polygon side into opacity. So I'm telling it I want the foreground and background to be different using the polygon side. And now we've got red. Let's take a look at this. Background color, so our background color, the back of the polygon is red, and the foreground, the front side of my polygon is blue. Okay, well that's colors. Well, what if I wanted actual pages? I can minimize this. What if I wanted actual pages so that it's a little more dressed up than red and blue? Not a problem. I have input channels here for that. So I'm going to move over to add node, 2D texture, image. I'm going to double click. And for my image, I'm going to choose, this is for my background, so I'm going to choose inner cover, it's the back. And I'm going to map that in the Y, and we'll do automatic sizing just so that it fits it to the page. And let's do that in the background. Let's do a test render so we can start to see it there. And let's do the foreground. So we just have to do the same thing. I'm going to copy and paste. I'm done with this one, so I can close it up. And on this one, I'll use the same settings, except I'll change the image. I'll use the comic book cover. We're using the Tofu comic book, which is a fun one to read, I think. So I'll go ahead and close that. Plug in the foreground color. Okay, so we've got our two different images. And there we go. We've got the cover that says he's here, he's hungry, he's vegetarian. It's Tofu the Vegan Zombie, so that was kind of a fun tagline. So we've got the inside here that's a completely different image. So that allows us to keep our polygon count down. We can have a paper thin polygon. We don't have to worry about using two sets of polygons or doing some kind of compositing trick or anything like that. So as it flips over, we get two different images. So hopefully that'll give you some ideas of not only how to animate a page turning, but for texturing a page turning, that can come in handy as well. So hopefully that'll get you started. If you want, try out using morphs and try some other ways as well. These are just a couple options that should get you started.